So the last couple of weeks we've talked a little bit about nitrogen and sulfur application. We're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about phosphorus today, which is done quite a bit differently. I'm Tim Mundorf, Nutrient Management Lead here at Central Valley Ag, and today we're going to talk a little bit about phosphorus recommendations. So we kind of talked about those uptake curves and how sulfur and nitrogen are used by the plant as the growing season progresses. We really don't think about that near as much in phosphorus. With nitrogen and sulfur, a lot of times we're trying to feed that plant a little bit directly, but with phosphorus especially, we're really trying to feed the soil, then we let the soil feed the plant from there. So we really focus on that soil test. So we really want our growers to go out there and do some intense sampling. Whether that's zone samples or grid samples, we like to have a good idea of that variation across the field. But in general, for most growers, we're going to shoot for a number somewhere around 25 to 30 part per million phosphorus. And what we'll do is we'll try to build soil test levels. So we're going to always apply at least crop removal when we're below those numbers, but then we're going to want to add some on top of crop removal. And what we normally think about when we think about crop removal for phosphorus, I'll just use corn as an example, but somewhere in the range of about 0.37 to 0.40 pounds per bushel. And if you've got soybeans, we're going to be thinking somewhere around 0.80 to 0.85 pounds per bushel of crop removal. What that looks like when we take that and put that into equation, something like this. So let's say I'm shooting for 25 part per million, but my soil test level is only 20 part per million. Well, I'm going to look at that difference, and then I'm going to try to figure out how much phosphorus it's going to take to raise 1 part per million. And it differs by soil, but we think a lot of about 15 pounds of P2O5 to raise 1 part per million. And then we might spread that application of build across maybe 4 applications or 4 years until we soil test again. And then of course on top of that, we've got to apply that crop removal. So we might have that 0.37 times your expected yield goal. And you work that math out and we've got 5 part per million difference, 5 times 15. So we're looking at 75 pounds of P2O5 to try to raise the 5 part per million that we're trying to do. And then we'll divide that across 4 applications. So you'll be just a little under 20 pounds of P2O5 per year for the build. And then for say 200 bushel corn here, we'll also have about 75 pounds of P2O5. And then we've got to work that into a product. So we've got basically about 20 pounds of P2O5 here for the build, plus about 75 pounds of P2O5 for the crop removal, ends up being about 95 pounds of P2O5. When we think about products that we're going to use, I've got our 2 most common products right here in front of me. MAP, or monoammonium phosphate, is kind of that industry standard basic phosphorus product. It's 11% nitrogen and runs about 52% phosphorus or 52% P2O5. MES, or microessential sulfur and zinc, is our product that we like to use, especially where we've got, our phosphorus levels in a pretty good range. It's 12% nitrogen, it's 40% P2O5, but on top of that, we also bring in about 10% sulfur and about 1% zinc. And we find that soils that test low in phosphorus also tend to test low on zinc. So a lot of times we like to bring in that little bit of zinc as well to make sure we're kind of covering everything. So as we make that recommendation or convert that 75 pounds of P2O5 to MAP, you basically double it. So it ends up being about 150 pounds of MAP for 75 pounds of P2O5, or actually when we were doing our build and our crop removal, it was 95 pounds of P2O5, so about 200 pounds of MAP. Be just a little bit more of microessentials, sulfur and zinc, or sometimes when we're trying to do a build in a lower testing soil, we'll do a mix. So half MAP, half MES, we'll blend them together, still get that nice benefit of the extra sulfur and zinc, but take advantage maybe of the little bit better economics with MAP application. So as you think about phosphorus application, it's quite a bit different than sulfur or nitrogen where we try to just feed the plant. So as you think about the recommendation here, we're trying to build soil test levels to a level that will feed the crop and not limit yield. And in this case, we're talking about 25 part per million phosphorus. If we only had 20 part per million, again, we'd have some build that we'd add on there, approximately 20 pounds of P2O5, and we'd also have to cover crop removal. So we're always thinking about crop removal and what's gonna leave your field in the grain truck, and we wanna make that a portion of our recommendation, but we also wanna cover build as well. So when we're thinking mainly crop removal or we're above that target level, we might think more about MES. And when we're below that target we're shooting for, where there's got to be a significant amount of build applied as well, we might think more about MAP. But since we like, again, that sulfur and zinc that's in the MES, a lot of times we'll blend the two products together. One thing we didn't talk about here is whether you own the ground or rent it. So guys that own the ground and are shooting for top yield might be a little more interested in building soil test levels a little bit higher, be a little bit more focused on trying to create that long-term fertility program. A guy who's renting might be wanting to focus mainly on the crop removal side of it and only replace what he's taken out because he doesn't want to leave a lot of phosphorus there for the next guy who might get the ground when he thinks he won't have it in a couple of years. So that difference in philosophy between owned and rented comes into play as well. So again, in a video, we can't walk you through everything. Best to sit down with your field sales agronomist and work out a fertility program, not just fertilizer application. With Central Valley Ag, I'm Tim Undorf, Nutrient Management Lead. Thanks for watching this episode of Agronomy Focus.